Welcome back, and now for the news in detail. Over 1,700 people have died from COVID-19 in the US in the last 24 hours as the country's death toll nears 86,000. Meanwhile, Spain's death toll has declined as compared to a day before, recording 138 new deaths and taking the total past 27,400. The global death toll from the virus has crossed 302,000 with over 4.4 million infections. What in this report?
Countries are surely but cautiously opening up amid warnings of a second wave of the virus. Fatalities in France continue to spike, while Cambridge University study reveals about 6.5 million people have been infected in the UK. The WHO has warned if countries fail to prepare their health systems, the new coronavirus could become endemic.
The lesson here is no time for celebration, but time for preparation. Because it's not the first time that the world is facing a pandemic, but definitely this has been a very, very devastating one. So even if we have few cases, we have seen that the strongest health systems can be overwhelmed in a couple of weeks.
The economic fallout of the virus has got the world in fits as even massive stimulus packages fail to compensate. The International Olympics Committee expects to bear the costs of hundreds of millions due to the postponed Tokyo 2020 Games.
We anticipate that we will have to bear costs of up to $800 million for our part of the responsibilities for the organization of the Games. And this amount there will be covered by the IOC itself, of course, including any funding we may have to refer to from the Olympic Foundation.
Public health authorities across the globe have pushed for expanding cutting-edge research of COVID-19 in a bid to develop a vaccine.
In Pakistan, Prime Minister Imran Khan says 150 million people have been affected by the lockdown enforced to contain the coronavirus spread in the country. In a press conference, Khan said the country cannot afford an indefinite lockdown. He urged people to follow guidelines to help the government open businesses gradually. Earlier, the Civil Aviation Authority said Pakistan has extended the ban on international flight operations till May the 31st. Pakistan has reported 33 deaths due to the coronavirus in the last day, taking the tally to 803. More than 37,000 people have been infected in the country, with 1,430 testing positive over the past 24 hours. Health officials say the coronavirus recoveries have surpassed 10,000 after 460 people recovered in the past day. The US says ISIS Khorasan is responsible for the attacks on a maternity hospital and a funeral in Afghanistan this week. Washington's envoy Zalmay Khalilzad says the faction seeks to disrupt the peace deal between Kabul and the Taliban. Khalilzad said instead of falling into the trap of ISIS and delaying peace, the Afghans must come together to defeat this menace. He said the militant group seeks to trigger a Syria and Iraq-style sectarian war in Afghanistan. Earlier this week, over 24 people were killed in separate attacks on a medical facility in Kabul and a funeral in Nangarhar. Yemen's military says it has killed scores of Houthi rebels during clashes in southeastern Al-Baida Governorate. The press office of the Yemeni military said several rebels were also wounded in the fighting. The Houthis have not commented yet. The military statement comes after the UN said Yemen's warring parties have made significant progress towards agreeing to a ceasefire. While briefing the Security Council, UN envoy Martin Griffiths said he has given the draft proposal to the government and the Houthi rebels. He said the proposal includes a ceasefire, humanitarian and economic revival, and urgent resumption of the political process. Palestinian leaders say they will convene to decide the response to the Israeli government's plan to annex parts of the West Bank. State media said President Mahmoud Abbas will chair a meeting of the leadership of the Palestinian Authority and the Palestine Liberation Organization on Saturday. At a press conference, Prime Minister Mohammed Shtayyeh said the meeting will take necessary decisions in the face of Israeli declaration. He said Israel's move will destroy the possibility of establishing an independent, contiguous and sovereign Palestinian state. Shtayyeh said the illegal annexation will not be accepted by any Palestinian. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and his former rival Benny Gantz signed a deal in April for a unity government. The agreement can accelerate Netanyahu's plans to annex parts of the West Bank, East Jerusalem and Jordan Valley. China has urged the US to meet it halfway in order to maintain the steady development of bilateral relations. Foreign Ministry spokesman Zhao Lijian said Beijing and Washington should cooperate to defeat the pandemic and restore the economy. The comments came after US President Donald Trump said he might cut ties with China over its handling of the pandemic. In an interview, Trump said the US could save $500 billion if the relationship with Beijing is severed. Trump has accused Beijing of concealing the true scale of the outbreak that first appeared in China's Hubei province in December 2019. China has rejected the United States' plan to extend a UN arms embargo on Iran. In a Twitter post, China's mission to the UN said it also rejects Washington's assertion that it could trigger a return of sanctions on Tehran at the Security Council. The mission said Washington failed to meet its obligations under the 2015 Security Council resolution by quitting the Iran nuclear deal. It said the US has no right to extend an arms embargo on Iran, let alone to trigger snapback. The mission said that maintaining the JCPOA deal is the only right way to move forward. Earlier, US Special Envoy for Iran, Brian Hook, said Washington will ensure the arms embargo remains one way or another. He said the US has drafted a Security Council resolution and will press ahead with diplomacy and build support. US President Donald Trump says he might cut ties with China over its handling of the COVID-19 pandemic. In an interview, Trump said the US could save $500 billion if the relationship with Beijing is severed. Trump said he does not want to talk to China's President Xi Jinping right now. He said the pandemic has also cast a shadow over the US-China trade deal, and it does not feel the same now. Trump has accused Beijing of concealing the true scale of the outbreak that first appeared in China's Hubei province in December 2019. The European Parliament has rejected a proposal by some of its lawmakers to cut pre-accession funds for Turkey. This proposal was rejected during the plenary session, which adopted an evaluation of the 2018 EU budget via remote voting system. EU-Turkey Joint Parliamentary Committee member Naco Sanchez Amor said the Parliament largely voted against suspending the IPA fund. Amor said those funds are now mainly focused on supporting an independent civil society in Turkey. The proposal was submitted by German lawmaker Monika Hohlmeier from centre-right political group, the European People's Party. The group also remained unsuccessful in its move to officially end accession talks with Turkey in most recent version of EP's report on Turkey. The EU will provide over $186 million for Turkey's IPA funds in 2020. Trade ministers from the group of 20 major economies have vowed to cooperate to mitigate the impact of COVID-19 pandemic. In a statement released after the second extraordinary virtual moot, the ministers endorsed actions to support world trade and investment. They planned long-term measures to support the necessary reform of WTO and multilateral trading system. The ministers pledged to strive for a solid foundation for global economic recovery based on a strong, sustainable, and inclusive growth. They also welcomed the bloc's efforts to provide an in-depth analysis of the impact of the coronavirus on the world trade. Mozambique says its security forces have killed 50 insurgents in a two-day anti-terror operation. In a statement, Interior Minister Ahmad Muqdad said the operation was carried out in the northern Cabo Delgado region. According to Amnesty International, since 2017, terrorist attacks have killed 350 people in Cabo Delgado. The violence has affected over 150,000 people during this period. United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres says mankind is unprepared for COVID-19. During a virtual meeting of the UN System Chief Executives Board for Coordination, Guterres said the world lacks humility, unity, and solidarity. Guterres gave an overview of the state of the world, reflecting on future of multilateralism beyond the immediate response to the COVID-19 pandemic. Guterres said COVID-19 has exposed the fragility of humankind and the planet. He said despite scientific progress, humanity still couldn't find a cure to the virus. Meanwhile, World Bank President David Malpass reiterated his call for a debt moratorium for the developing countries. He said economies need to reopen in a way that people can rise beyond poverty. The European Medicine Agency says a vaccine for the coronavirus can be ready in a year in an optimistic scenario. Talking to media, the EMA's head of vaccines, Marco Cavalieri, said there could be delays along the way. Meanwhile, Oxford University officials say results from the UK's first human trial of a vaccine can be available as soon as next month. Well, one of the UK government's chief scientific advisors has said fresh air and sunlight are among protective measures against COVID-19. Deputy Chief Medical Officer Jonathan Van Tam said the antibody tests will be available for public in the near future.
We have been waiting for a really good antibody test to be ready. There are now at least two available. One of those has received its CE mark on the 28th of April, the Roche test. It has been validated by Public Health England on the 7th of May, and I anticipate that it will be rapidly rolled out in the days and weeks to come.
More stories to follow right after a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back. The Kremlin claims the domestic coronavirus crisis is easing, saying the number of new daily cases fell below 10,000 for the first time in nearly 2 weeks. But the country has now registered over 10,500 infections in a day, proving the assertion false. President Vladimir Putin said over the past weeks, all efforts have been aimed at fighting the COVID-19 pandemic. He claimed the situation is changing, which gives an opportunity to once again focus on current and long-term agenda. But there are now over 260,000 confirmed cases in the country after the daily infection rate rose past 10,500. The country also has the second highest in the world after the US, with a total of 2,305 deaths. Lithuania, Latvia and Estonia have opened their borders to each other, creating the first travel bubble within the European Union. The move comes in a bid to jumpstart economies broken down by COVID-19. In a statement, Lithuanian Prime Minister Saulius Skvernelis said the travel bubble is an opportunity for businesses to reopen. EU Commission representative in Lithuania said the Baltic states are close partners and their economies are well integrated. Earlier this week, travel restrictions were eased between Finland and Estonia and Poland and Lithuania. Baltic countries were quick to close their borders and imposed lockdown measures to slow the spread of the virus. The UN says this year a record 24 million Sahelians need life-saving assistance and protection due to violence and natural disasters. In a virtual meeting with aid agencies, UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs said nearly 7 million people are grappling with forced displacement. The OCHA said a rapid deterioration of Sahel crisis is driving humanitarian needs across the region to unprecedented levels. It said half of those affected are children. UNHCR Director Milcent Matuli said COVID-19 has added to the uncertainty of worsening the displacement and protection crisis. The UN said nearly $3.5 billion are required to assist 17 million residents to tackle the humanitarian situation and pandemic. The World Trade Organization's chief has announced to step down a year earlier than planned amid the COVID-19 fallout. In a virtual WTO meeting, Roberto Azevedo said his early departure as Director General is a personal decision and is in the best interests of the organization. Since the COVID-19 crisis hit, Azevedo has called on the governments to refrain from imposing export restrictions on food and medical supplies.
The decision was reached after long and hard reflection and much discussion with my family. For the reasons that I have outlined, I believe that it would be best if members promptly move ahead with the process for selecting the next Director General.
Insurance market Lloyd's of London says it expects COVID-19 related claims will cost it up to $4.3 billion. The surge in claims will result in its biggest payout since the September 11 attacks in the US. Lloyd's said losses can rise further if the current lockdown continues into another quarter. Lloyd's said its payout on COVID-19 claims will also equal the combined impact of Hurricanes Harvey, Irma and Maria in 2017. Lloyd's chief executive, John Neal, said it will take at least 2 years to estimate the true cost of this pandemic. Lloyd's estimates government borrowing could be around $10 trillion globally to protect the economy from the losses. Another weather situation from around the globe. And that's all for now. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at Indus News.